you up at night? What's one of your horror stories? Host a conference for 800 plus people and you can't get in yourself. So I think we have some real life examples here. So without further ado, I want to introduce my esteemed colleagues. We have Roger Beasley, who is the Chief Information Officer over at ATF, Jonathan Maffa with the FBI, Gwen Miller, Acting CIO for U.S. Marshals, and Nick Ward, formerly one of our own, who is now the Chief Information Officer over at DEA. Thank you all for joining us on this panel today. Why don't we start with the first question, which is what I'd like to know from you guys is what is your top cybersecurity challenge? What keeps you up at night? They don't have to be the same thing. Let's see. I'm going to pick on Roger. Roger, why don't you start for us?
Sure. So let me ask this first. Did you have a cyber issue getting into your computer, or was it something else?
Oh, by the way, if I'm showing up as Kevin Cox on the name label, it's really, I'm not taking over his computer. It is authorized access.
Right. Sounds like a cyber violation there anyway.
I'm just sitting near his computer with the camera happened to be projecting onto me. All right.
Okay. So, what keeps me up at night? I think it kind of goes back to the old adage, what we don't know is what keeps me up at night. I mean, the reality is, with the potential for nation state backed, adversaries and, their funding that they have and resources and so forth. I mean, the reality is they could be in our system as we know right now, waiting for us to, not be paying attention or whatever else. So we continue to do what we do. We continue to try and do everything that we can to, prevent them from moving around and watching to make sure that they're not moving around. But the old reality is, we just don't know what's there and, what they're doing. So that's probably the biggest thing for me.
All right. Thank you. How about you, Jonathan?
Hi, Melinda. Thanks for having me. Many things keep me up at night, but one that I'll talk about now is really related to just the size of the FBI. We have very diverse and large numbers of networks, endpoints, and systems across 3 full enclaves. And so for me and for cybersecurity in general here at the Bureau, we have a huge challenge securing that, really those big enterprise enclaves and all that they compose. But we also have a number of siloed and individual mission networks that have sprung up over the years as well-intentioned people are trying to accomplish the mission and didn't feel like enterprise IT was maybe meeting their needs. They create their own systems. And something I tell the director often when we kind of talk about this, if the Bureau gets hacked, it means if anything gets hacked. It doesn't matter if it's a localized system, and it doesn't even matter, frankly, if the data is of much value. The reputational damage to the Bureau, to our cyber investigative mission, to the confidence of the American people in what we do, it's all impacted whenever anything in the FBI gets hacked. And so for me, cybersecurity means that we have to understand what we have, and we have to understand it down to that very individual local level. And that's a massive challenge. It's something we're spending a lot of time and energy on, trying to get our IT asset inventory where it needs to be, and then ensuring that all of those things are secured to the same and right standard and are being monitored to be monitored. And so it's not just enough to kind of worry about it from the enterprise IT, air quotes, perspective. It has to really be holistic all the way down to the local level. And that, for me as a CIO here, is a real challenge.
Thank you, Jonathan. How about you, Gwen? I know you're relatively new in the hot seat, although you've been near the hot seat for a long time.
Thank you for having me today. I guess what I'd say is that from an operational perspective, supporting the law enforcement users in our environment, we've approved a number of technologies and applications for our operational users to use. However, they are interconnecting those applications, tools in ways that we may not have expected. And so we worry about data sharing amongst those apps and how those interconnections could put us at risk. From a customer perspective, they see it as a productivity benefit or a mission need, where from a security perspective, we go, is there a potential opportunity to expose that sensitive data, sensitive agency data to unauthorized persons and or systems. And so that really for us becomes the issue of how are they taking the tools that we've approved in one, in a certain way, and they're using it in a different way that could be opening up a hole that we don't know. Especially when we think about all the upticks and potential attacks that are ongoing these days, that you just don't know what's going to, what's the next thing to be hacked. So I come back to Roger's concern, because that's really, what don't we know? We know there's unknowns out there. And so what are those knowns unknowns, and what are the unknown knowns? So.
Wow, God. Actually, I'm most impressed at how quickly you let all that roll off your tongue without fumbling at all. It was awesome. Thank you, Gwen. How about you, Nick?
Yeah, I mean, I think, especially coming over from being a CISO into being a CIO, what probably keeps me up the most at night, or what I would worry most about, would be when I have agents out in the field doing, in an active mission, or situations where, availability of my systems actually is going to impact the lives of people. So like, if I have my confidential sources get leaked for some reason, people could get killed, or if I have agents that, for whatever reason, don't have access to the information about their operation plan that they're working on and can't communicate with each other, those are pretty bad days and could result in loss of life. So that's probably what would concern me the most, is if my deconflict, it could be simple stuff where we don't think about it, is if my deconfliction system doesn't work the way it's supposed to, that could really have some serious conflicts. And the way cyber can impact those things is pretty significant, whether it be ransomware that just accidentally got executed and made that stuff unavailable, or took down systems during one of those kinds of events. Those would be probably some of the things that would be a pretty bad day for me at DEA. Certainly the loss of data, the traditional cyber breach, those things would be pretty impactful on the long term. But the more immediate things, like we think a lot about, like, we don't do enough for disaster recovery. I don't feel like we test and think about, we focus a lot of effort on data loss and not enough on making sure that when something does fail, that we can fail over somewhere else. And it's an area that I think that cybersecurity sometimes loses focus on. And that's where I am today.
Thank you, Nick. And I'll start the next question with you. How have you seen the cybersecurity landscape change over the last 3, 5, 7 years? How about since your last tour here?
I think it's pretty obvious that there's been the giant push to cloud, and being able to access more things remotely is probably the two major changes that really have come that really affect us. And so the premise of zero trust, which I know can be a dirty word for some people and has been a boon for others in terms of how to market and get money. But in terms of like the idea that we need our workforce to be able to access data and resources wherever they go, and has been a great thing. Like having the pandemic and having the fact that we were forced to think about ways to make these things available to people was a very good thing, because we finally realized that we have to have that agility and have that ability to make our very sensitive systems available to people, even when they're in a squad car, or even when they're sitting in a hotel room and things like that. And being able to architect that has been a big benefit to us. And it's been a big change. We can't operate in a world where we think we can just isolate our systems. And that's probably been the big significant change. And it's been a big value. And when I think about it, back, 10 years ago, it probably was trying to isolate more. And we still talk about microsegmentation, but it doesn't mean the same thing. Like isolating systems doesn't work by preventing access. It works by how do we give more access in more situations? Because I can tell you from firsthand that people are very entrepreneurial. They'll figure out how to get their jobs done. And if you don't give them an avenue to do that in a safe way, they're going to do it in an unsafe way. So by preventing our ability to do things really results in less security, because our data will end like, yes, we can hold people accountable. We can arrest people. We can fire people. But at the end of the day, once they've leaked our data out onto these insecure systems, it's already gone. So it kind of doesn't matter. That's all like response. So the whole concept of zero trust and making things very accessible to people wherever they are has been a very good thing, in my opinion.
Okay. Thank you, Nick. How about you, Gwen? I know I mentioned just now you've been near the hot seat. You've been around justice in the CIO's office for several years now. How has this, what's your opinion in terms of what it was like when you first started here, and then what's it like today?
So, I mean, with COVID, I will say that we had a mobile workforce prior to COVID, but that workforce truly became, everybody for a short period, and then our operational law enforcement folks went back to working in the office as quickly as they could. But our mobile workforce has just grown tremendously, and I come back to kind of what Nick was saying. Our users are going to find a way to get the job done. They may not understand the implications and or the risk on how they're interconnecting stuff that we may have approved in a way that we thought they were going to use it this way, and they're now doing it in a different way, and they don't know to let us know. And how do we make sure that we're protecting the data to prevent that loss? Because the tools are there, or they're going, well, I can go out and pull this app and use that to help me do something to meet a mission need or to work with another state and local law enforcement agency, and not understand that the data that's being shared between us is being protected in transit, and that could be, we could lose that data, or it could be picked up by somebody and used in an adverse fashion. So some of those things existed before COVID, but it really grew during COVID because of the fact of just everybody working from home. And, what are those possibilities that you could have more breaches now that you're in a remote environment almost full time?
All right. Thanks, Gwen. How about you, Roger? I know you also transitioned from the department, JMD, to the component. How do you think, at least from the cyber perspective, things are different between, now versus 3-5 years ago?
In some ways, I think things have changed, and Nick and Gwen have both done a really good job of talking about that. The basically moving from the boundary to zero trust, or everything being authenticated based on an identity, so forth. That's been the big shift. But I'll also say, the core of what we used to do when I was in JMD 8 years ago, really hasn't changed. That's the basics, the hardening of the systems, the modernizing of the systems, the user training, and so forth. That's still consistent today. We're constantly fighting that battle. Those patches that we're putting on seemingly daily, those VPRs that come out from JSOC constantly. So, some of the same, some new. But I think Nick and Gwen both hit it. And that is, the big change for me is working with agents. Coming from JMD, where you're working with mostly administrative type professionals, to agents that are out there trying to catch the bad guys and do anything and everything that they possibly can do, to get that job done and get that done fast and right. They're resourceful, to say the least, and they're not afraid of reaching out to state and local police departments or other places, asking for video, putting that on a thumb drive, and bringing it right back into our network. They don't really care about that end user security, if you will. They just want to get that job done. So that's probably the toughest part and most different part, for me, than what I saw in JMD.
Thanks, Roger. That was insightful. Now, last but not least, Jonathan, I remember when I first met you 5 years ago, probably you came from you didn't come from the CIO world. You actually was on the mission side. How was it? How were things back then versus now? I cannot hear. Yeah.
Yeah, we had a double unmute for some reason. So sorry about that, Melinda. Not that I disagree with anything the other panelists have said, especially some of the COVID implications. I think we've all experienced the changes that's driven. But I think I'd be remiss if I didn't mention solar winds and the sort of watershed moment that was. Having lived through that, it was a great introduction for me from that mission side to the CIO side of the house. But it also completely changed the external environment related to cybersecurity as well. And that's had a huge impact on all of us. First and foremost, the nature of that attack, its sophistication, the way it manifested, especially having a background in counterintelligence, I can really appreciate just how sophisticated it was. I think it exposed some flaws in our ability to do supply chain risk management that are really serious and that I don't know that any one agency can solve. And we saw what the implication of that was. It chewed up all the time of all of our cybersecurity resources to deal with that. And then it led to the external environment, the cyber EO, NSM 8, all that's come from it has really heightened expectation on all of us and our organization to improve and overcome problems we've known about in the cybersecurity arena for many years, but hadn't dedicated the resources or time or attention to fix. And all of a sudden, we're now being told to fix those on a timeline that is uber aggressive, intentionally so and rightfully so, but one that has put a lot of pressure and challenge on our workforce to deliver results quickly. And so I think the cyber teams in the federal government have really felt the heat of that. I know ours have here at the Bureau. But it's also done a lot of good in the sense of really making cybersecurity and the internal cybersecurity of our agency a top priority for our leadership here at the Bureau. And so it's driven a lot of good at the same time. But that's a radically different environment than the one I stepped into when I came over to the CIO side. And I think SolarWinds then that string of critical vulnerabilities that have really followed since. And every one of those, the degree to which we have to pay attention to them and really thoroughly try to address them on every single endpoint, that's not going away anytime soon. So the new dawn from that SolarWinds event, I think, has forever changed how cybersecurity is viewed, certainly here at the Bureau, and I know around the federal government.
Thank you, Jonathan. So far we've covered a little bit of what keeps you up at night. We've covered how the world has changed over the last 3, 5, 7 years. What I'd like to touch on, and some of you already did in your various responses, is the entire zero trust architecture discussion. I would like to hear from each of you. How do you think it's going to help your specific component to stay ahead of the adversary? And more importantly, what are some of the potential challenges you see ahead of you as we attempt to essentially transform ourselves into a zero trust architecture? I am going to start with somebody that's not Nick, because I know he's got a lot to say on this one. I will start actually with Jonathan. Jonathan, how about you?
Sure. Yeah, no, I'm happy to start. I think as the question implies, the move to zero trust to me is really one of necessity. I think we're increasingly defending really complex enterprise networks, greater diversity of devices, the distribution of the applications and services. And I think certainly I see it from working with the IC as well. That complexity is only going to grow as we move into the multi-cloud, hybrid cloud environment. And then also working here at the Bureau, I get a really good taste every day as I sit in our morning intel briefing of just how much more persistent, harder to detect our adversaries are getting in the cyber space as well. And so I think realizing that the perimeter is no longer sort of the physical office spaces that the FBI runs, and our network kind of runs through them, and now extends out to all of those points where our data is stored or where we access it with partners and vendors. So in addition to EO 14028, frankly, telling us we have to do zero trust, I think it's pretty clear to anyone in our chairs that the mindset really has to shift away from that kind of traditional perimeter defense strategy. And so for me, how it kind of keeps us ahead of the game, it's just a more real-time approach that I think keeps up with that dynamic threat environment that I was just mentioning. I mean, our defenses in a zero trust environment are making these very risk aware access decisions. They're automating detection and response. Our defenses are stopping applications and services from communicating until they're verified by using our predefined authentication and authorization requirements. And then importantly, if a cyber attack does occur, those things, the designation of user roles and attributes, the network segmentation, it really decreases an adversary's ability to move laterally. It increases our visibility into user activity. It really mitigates the impact and severity of breaches. And then I don't know if you want us to hit challenges sort of right after that. I think there are a lot of those. It sort of speaks to what I talked about in my very first comment. We have a very big enterprise. We have multiple enclaves, multiple mission networks, and zero trust really only works if it's fully supported and embraced really throughout that enterprise. There's no easy button for that. And so for the Bureau to fully implement zero trust, we're going to have to implement it everywhere on all of those places. And then our identity and access control infrastructure is really going to have to keep up. It's going to have to modernize. We're going to have to maintain it to make those kind of continuous access control, decision-making, enforcement, logging advances that we need them to be able to do this. And then I think the data challenge is going to come in, securing and tagging data on-prem or in the cloud. And some of that data is not even owned by the FBI. All of that is going to have to happen to make zero trust go. So by no means is there an easy path forward on that, but I think the concepts around it to me and those being more understood are a really important mindset shift to make now as we build to that future. And so that's kind of my take on it.
Very good. Thanks, Jonathan. How about you, Gwen? Where do you see zero trust as potentially adding value? Maybe where would you see it start being implemented in U.S. Marshals? And what are some of the implementation challenges? Because we know there's always implementation challenges.
I think for us, our first concern is we have some priorities that we're already working, like cloud migration, that we have aging hardware that we have to